Ohio's fight against Medicaid fraud. Welcome to Columbus on the Record. I'm Mike Thompson. For weeks, Governor DeWine has faced criticism from his fellow Republicans over allegations of widespread fraud in the state's Medicaid system. It started with a report in the conservative outlet Daily Wire, which accused home health agencies of fraudulently billing the system that pays for health care for low-income and disabled people. House Speaker Matt Huffman said the DeWine administration was not doing enough to prevent fraud. DeWine released a list of steps he is taking to address the allegations. They include a moratorium on new home health care companies accepting Medicaid reimbursements, also using electronic monitoring to verify that home health care workers' visits take place, and other things. And this week, the nation's top Medicare and Medicaid official, Dr. Mehmet Oz, visited Ohio. He defended DeWine, but said Ohio needs more safeguards. Sarah Donaldson, that report in the Daily Wire raised a lot of questions, but do we know exactly or even have a ballpark idea of how much fraud is out there?
I don't think we do, Mike. I mean, the Daily Wire reports a number. Of course, Republican Representative Mike Davila has been talking about Medicaid fraud for more than a year. He has put out some numbers, but I don't know that we have this neat, wrapped in a bow figure. I don't think anyone in the press corps, politician on the right or the left, is disputing that there's some level of fraud, like there is in any other public benefits system. But I don't know that we have a perfect picture on what that looks like here.
Now, Terry, the DeWine administration points out they've had many prosecutions. They've found a lot of millions of dollars in fraud that they have uncovered over the past 3 years. So they are investigating it, but he's still getting grief for not doing enough.
Well, part of the problem is this isn't just Medicaid. There's also a lot of other things dealing with nursing homes, unemployment compensation, SBA loans. And the problem is the federal government, I think one of the things that's really driven this big and higher is post-COVID, the federal government, including Congress, both sides, were wanting to shovel the money out so quick that people realized all this free money, the rules are loose, we can get it. And so definitely there's more to be done. And another problem one of the top state officials told me is a lot of times the local prosecutors here in Franklin County, unless it's more than 50,000, they don't want to bother prosecuting. The feds, the U.S. Attorney's Office, unless it's $500,000. So clearly there's more to be done and a lot of cleaning up to done. But part of it is the federal government's fault because we got so many different programs, so many different rules, and different departments. The Labor Department, how they handle things versus HHS are different. So yes, there's a problem. It isn't all one ethnic group as some claim, but it's a big problem and it needs to be cleaned up.
The issue involves a waiver that allows individuals to charge the Medicaid system for help for folks who want to stay in their home, like housekeeping and, homemaking care and personal care. It seems like the intention is good, keep people in their home, Stanley, keep them from having to go to expensive nursing homes, but you can see how that could open the door for fraud.
Yeah, and also, you got to think about it too. This is also going to hurt trust in the system. And so these are folks who depend on Medicaid. These are seniors, disabled folks, folks who are really in a vulnerable situation. And so I think accountability matters, but at the same time, we're talking about trust. And so how do we make sure that we're improving the system at the same time? But I think what folks want to hear is how we're going to make sure we keep folks accountable, how we're going to allow these seniors and folks who are disabled to be able to protect their dignity without compromising the values and overcorrecting so much where we're punishing those same folks too.
It seems like this Daily Wire story focused on basically the Somali community. They focused on the northeast corner of Columbus, of Franklin County. It sort of follows what happened in Minnesota with the Somali community there, right? Stanley, is they being unfairly targeted?
I mean, I completely think so. I mean, this is something that's happening in all states. However, this is something that's being very targeted to a certain population. If we're going to make sure that we're targeting it, I think everybody agrees. Let's prosecute the fraud, but also let's make sure that the folks that we're talking about are able to live in some kind of dignity too.
This has become an issue in the governor's race. Both Amy Acton and Vivek Ramaswamy are critical of what the state has done. They've got a kind of a plan, not many details on how they're going to combat fraud, Sarah.
Yeah, and you've seen that. I mean, both of them have talked on different issues where it's always, we have concepts of a plan, but maybe not that solidified plan quite yet. But of course, again, with the focusing in on the Somali immigrant community, that has been going on for months. There were widespread, at times unproven allegations of daycare fraud. And again, the governor's office has kind of taken a lot of the blame here. And you've heard Republicans say, well, we shouldn't point fingers. We need to just move forward and fix it. But of course, this is all happening under a Republican administration, and Republicans have been in power for decades in this state.
Well, I differ with you a little bit. That's the spin from the Democrat Party that's all Republicans' fault. But they forget during the 4 years of Joe Biden and other times Democrat presidents, a lot of these rules were written out of D.C. as far as what you can do and what you can't do. And clearly one of the things that's, I think, important now is people are realizing if we can do some things like Tennessee is doing, where it gives incentive to the state to recapture more of the stolen or fraudulent money or just one community. And there is, again, in the whole medical system, the nursing care system, there's a lot of legal theft, there's illegal theft, but clearly when it's billions and billions of dollars in Ohio, it needs to be tightened down.
But don't you think that at least the Ramaswamy campaign is distancing itself from Mike DeWine? I can't say that he's trying to say he's going to continue.
They're saying they've got a plan, and they've actually detailed the plan as far as how they would crack down on what they want. And the fact that Dr. Oz came here and seemed somewhat friendly to give Ohio some tools to better deal with it and ramp things up, that's important.
But I do think, to your point, Sarah, at the end of the day, these are Republicans who are also pointing fingers at Republicans and saying this is the issue. I mean, Ramaswamy camp came out, Speaker Huffman, McCauley also came out and pointed the finger right at DeWine. And again, I think these are folks who have been running the state for decades at this point, and voters are going to wonder and ask whose fault and who's to blame.
Well, but is this also a distraction from inflation and high gas prices by Republicans, especially targeting Minnesota? They went all after Minnesota, which is a Democratic governor up there with Tim Walz, and they weren't blaming the federal government. They were all the blame went to Tim Walz up there. It's a way to distract folks from, $5 a gallon gas and potatoes and
I don't think
ground beef. It's expensive.
I don't think it's quite that sinister the way it's done. But a key issue has been identified, and again, this isn't $10 or $12 million. This is billions and billions and billions, because people don't realize so much of the state budget is pass-through money, particularly of Medicaid. And if you can tighten it down by 10 or 15%, that's real money.
All right. Ohio law exempts tech companies from paying state sales taxes on materials and equipment used to build data centers. In last year's budget, lawmakers wanted to end the tax break. They voted to do that, but Governor DeWine vetoed that provision, so the tax break continued. Last week, Signal Ohio reported that tax break cost the state about $1.5 billion last year. That's 11 times more than state officials predicted. This week, Governor DeWine temporarily paused the tax break. A special committee of lawmakers continues its study on the cost and benefits of data centers in Ohio. Stanley Gates, the argument is these data centers bring a lot of jobs, construction jobs, and then spillover jobs after they're built, tech companies moving nearby. But $1.5 billion is a lot of money.
And someone needs to be held accountable for that. That is a big oversight at the end of the day. And again, as we just talked about the previous topic, someone needs to be held accountable for this. That is a very big amount of things that could have went towards schools, capital projects, and folks are going to wonder, where's that return on investment that taxpayer dollars went towards, and how we're going to make sure that we fix that. And so I think that we're going to see that this is going to become a kitchen table issue. There's already a petition going around about data centers, and I think that this is going to make folks think twice about that.
Now, the DeWine administration argues, Terry, that they didn't see the rapid growth of data centers in 2025 versus 24.
Well, there clearly needs to be some tightening because this is so new and it's so fresh, but people forget a couple little factors. 36 other states have similar kind of sales tax exemptions on the equipment that's put in these centers. So Ohio can tighten and should tighten, but then also going back to the Kasich administration, some of the big four, including Amazon, already got back then exemptions. So there's definitely tightening name. But in some ways, this is money that if we didn't have the data centers, that money wouldn't have come in anyway, because this is because of new things coming in. So clearly, there is tightening, there is going to be tightening, but it's all part of the debate. How do we tighten down? How do we keep Ohio competitive but get the jobs?
So is DeWine administration, they just said it's just growth? Because it could go from $100 and some odd thousand to $1.6 billion is a lot.
Well, the DeWine administration didn't really point to much beyond the fact that it said that the data center joint committee that the legislature has formed is studying the issue, and he thinks it needs to be put on pause while they study that issue. I should note that Governor DeWine has been very supportive of this tax exemption. Lawmakers tried to get rid of it in the budget last year, and DeWine vetoed that effort.
How could he, I'm not a lawyer, but how can he just say, we're not going to give him this tax break for, a month or 2 months or 6 years, 6 months?
Some of the tax breaks are already baked in that he can't.
It's only new tax breaks.
And it's generally smaller data centers, not your big four, the Amazons, the Facebooks. So again, there's a lot of details, but we also forget the state of Ohio in the last month found they've got an extra $1.2 billion that came in because income tax collections and sales tax are higher. So some of the data centers are driving more income tax collections because in the construction field, the construction trades are very pro data centers because it's provided thousands of jobs and millions of dollars.
DeWine's office says that the companies that received the tax break invested $27 million in Ohio last year. So $27 billion for $1.6 billion in tax break. That's a pretty good deal, right, Stanley?
It's a pretty good deal until you continue to look at the rest of the recipe. I think that there are a lot of things that are baked in as soon as you start thinking about utility costs, also, water, the local aspect of this too. And so the property tax abatements that are happening and now schools and funding are also being threatened. I mean, I think that those are things that people should continue to ask questions about as well too.
And there's a thing called spin-off jobs. If you talk to the New Albany mayor, as I have, it might be this one center might only produce 75 full-time jobs, but then constantly you've got in and out tradespeople, electricians, other experts that way coming in to do repairs, do installations. So it's hard to gauge the full impact, but it's definitely a lot of money. And I'd rather have Ohio prepared and on track for the 21st century than sitting back hoping the big auto plants come back, which are not going to come back the way they used to.
I do just want to level set, though. This tax break has been around for almost a decade. These are not new facilities. These facilities have been coming in for years. So you hear from folks like Republican Speaker Matt Huffman who say maybe when they were new, this tax break made sense. But why are they getting a tax break when every other manufacturing facility that's building in Ohio is not?
And that's the tightening that needs to happen and I think will happen, but hopefully they'll take the time to do it smartly so you still get the jobs, get more money, but make it all work.
Democrats, they're reluctant to criticize these data centers because there are union folks building them, union folks, maintaining the electrical systems. So this is not really a partisan issue to some degree, right, Stanley?
No, this is not a partisan issue at all. I mean, I think folks have been asking that question over the past year, especially as it's starting to happen all across the state, but also locally again. And so I think that, this is not a partisan issue by any means. I think people are now just starting to look at numbers like this, where you have $1.5 billion that are missed. How are we going to make sure that we're not continuing to how do we make sure that we're giving economic development but not a corporate check at the same time? Blank check.
Yeah. The television ad battle in the Ohio U.S. Senate race is ramping up. Based on the ads, it looks like both campaigns are fishing for what issues will resonate most with voters. John Husted's ad goes after Sherrod Brown for being weak on the border, driving up the cost of living, supporting boys in girls' sports, and for accepting donations from Jeffrey Epstein Associates. Brown's ads go after Husted for not doing enough to lower prices and for accepting money from Epstein Associates and for voting against the release of the Epstein files. Husted first voted against releasing the files in September, but then voted to release them in November after President Trump agreed to it. Terry Casey, what issues are going to matter the most to voters in this campaign?
Well, ultimately, it's the economy. Jim Carville said it well, it's the economy, stupid. There was a former governor, Jim Rhodes in Ohio, who'd slam a wallet on the table in front of Ronald Reagan in 1980 and told him it's all about what goes in the wallet and what comes out of the wallet. So ultimately it'll be the economy. The difficult thing is you've got Husted, who's the incumbent there, but you've got Sherrod Brown, who was in Congress for 30-some years, including during the Biden years when inflation was 20 to 25%. So both of them have an incentive to try and distract on other things, but I'm not sure the Epstein connections, both of them have gotten money from associates of Epstein and other people that are questionable, but does that really work? So we're still searching to see how much is the economy and who has the right answers.
Why don't they just say it's Les Wexner or Abigail Wexner, associates of Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, the Sherrod Brown ads featured Wexner being deposed and talking about it and tying it all in, but I'm not sure whether it's going to connect that well because, like Sherrod Brown, he not only got lots of Wexner money, tens of thousands of dollars, but he also has got money from people like Harvey Weinstein, who's actually been a convicted sex offender. So they can throw back the guilt by association. I'm not sure it works either way because I think Ohioans are interested in other issues right now.
I would completely agree with it. I don't think that it's going to sell much. I mean, I think that it's a great start, but I think in November when people go to the ballot, the first thing they're going to be thinking about is how am I going to pay for my groceries? How am I going to get to work? And also what's my health care going to look like? They're not going to necessarily be interested in this topic that much.
So why are we seeing the ads? Why are we seeing Epstein being prominently displayed on these ads? And is it just trying to muddy up your opponent or deflect from, because John Husted did vote at first to block the files, release of the files, and then voted to release them after Trump said, okay, go ahead and release them. But so he's trying to maybe deflect from that. What's going on here, Sarah?
Well, I mean, Ohio has shifted redder and redder. Ohio is a Republican state, and I think Democrats especially took note of the fact that there were some folks, especially on the far right, who did break with Trump on the Epstein issue. Now, that was several months ago, and of course, a lot has changed since then. There are a lot of issues that have risen to the top, namely the economy, that gas prices are very high because of the war in Iran. So I think it's I kind of look to it as like, you know, Democrats saw a win with abortion immediately following the overturning of Roe, and they clung really hard to abortion. That didn't really work the last time that Brown ran. So I mean, I think it's, you know, trying to throw it out there to see what other than the economy can we message on.
And Sherrod Brown was a powerful U.S. Senator, chairman of one of the most important committees for 5.5 years from Epstein's death till he finished his term. Why didn't he push more for release of files then? And of course, part of it is those files are voluminous, complicated, and there's questions whenever you release any investigative law enforcement things, what's true, what's rumor, what's fact in there. But I think it'll ultimately get back to the economy.
Stanley, do you find it a bit ironic that Sherrod Brown, who spent 32 years in Washington, now labels John Husted, who's been there about a year and a half, as a Washington insider?
It is definitely ironic. However, I think, you know, when we look at the record, what Sherrod should be leading into is the fact that he is a Washington insider. I mean, you think about some of his accomplishments as it relates to pensions, labor, drug cost. I mean, those are things that he should lead into. Yes, you're a political insider, a Washington insider. That's actually your record. That's how you win this race as well in November.
I'm not sure being a Washington insider, Husted or Brown, is good to emphasize because people are mad at Congress and their lack of action on both sides on things.
I mean, I'd agree with that, but I think at the same time, people know when they see Sherrod Brown, they know what he's fighting for, they know his values, they know the dignity of work, and I think that that's what's going to ultimately matter in November, especially in this economy.
All right, our final topic, the age-old controversy over religion in schools. For decades, lawmakers and judges have battled over prayer in school, posting the Ten Commandments in classrooms, things like that. Laws and decisions have gone back and forth. Now a proposal before Ohio lawmakers would permit the teaching of the positive impact of Judeo-Christian values in U.S. history. It's called the Charlie Kirk American Heritage Act in honor of the slain conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Sarah Donaldson, what is the goal of this proposal, this bill?
So Representative Gary Click, who's a Republican and also a former Baptist pastor, tells me that he has heard from teachers who say that they are afraid to teach the truth about Christianity in public schools because of this idea of separation in church and state. And I'll do a little plug because I spent a couple months working with NPR on a series called Church and State, where we explored conversations like this about the state of the separation of church and state in the 21st century. So this Charlie Kirk American Heritage Act is kind of in name only. It's named after Charlie Kirk, but it does not mention Charlie Kirk. It's simply, Click tells me, reiterates the idea that the separation of church and state does not prevent teachers from teaching the positive impacts that Christianity has had on American history.
Does this need to be in state law, Terry, to say you can teach this?
Well, there are some teachers worried about what they can teach and talk about in religion, but as somebody that's visited cathedrals and mosques and temples all over the world on multiple continents, religious history is important to know and understand, because religion, good and bad, has driven a lot of things good and bad in the world. We need to understand our history better, but how do you teach it and teach it fairly, because it is so incredibly complex to understand all the different religions and their influences. And a lot of people don't think internationally, they're more focused locally. So it is a challenge, but I'm not sure this bill's going to solve it, because, again, religion and the world history is so complex and interwoven. It would take maybe a Solomon to figure out how to do it right.
Stanley, how do you, our money says, in God we trust. So how do you separate religion from American history? You can't.
Well, I don't think you can, but I think also at the same time, that's also why people are asking questions. What's the point of this bill? Because I think it's already happening. We have it on the money. We do teach that in schools, that, you know, religion has been a part of this country's upbringing. But I do think that folks are rightfully questioning when you frame and also think about messaging as well, after naming it in an oxymoronic way, if I might say so, after Charlie Kirk. I mean, people are going to ask questions. I mean, when Charlie Kirk says something, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. We should leave that up to interpretation and allow folks to say, is this a high priority that the state legislature should be pursuing?
When you read the bill, they list some of the things you can teach. And it's like teachers may teach this. It's not a mandate by any means, but some of them are reasonable, like talk about the religious motivations of the pilgrims who landed in Plymouth. But also talk about General Washington's direction regarding chaplains in the Army. That seems very specific.
Yeah, you know, something I heard in just researching this bill and talking to sources is that they'd like to see, you know, where exactly this list came from. I'm not sure if it was Gary Click or he worked on it with other people. But there is concern, I should say, from educators who say, A, this is unnecessary because folks are already able to teach this, but B, they are concerned anytime the state is prescribing exact curriculum. And again, this is not a mandate, it's a may, not a shall, but you know, it's still prescribing curriculum in a way by putting those words in the Ohio Revised Code.
Will teachers be allowed to teach about some religious folks who are not so favorable, like Father Coughlin, who used his radio broadcast to, you know, spout anti-Semitic rhetoric, Terry? Would that be allowed?
Well, in the history of the world, there's a lot of questionable characters and beliefs, and even within certain religions like Muslim, there's Sunni versus Shiite. So within the Protestant or the Catholic, there's all kind of factions, so it's complicated. I just wish the schools would do more basics on Economics 101 for students, and also in government, people understanding the three branches of government and why and how they're different. So there's a lot of things where we can do better in this age of YouTube and all kind of other distractions for young people.
So when do we have the Albert Einstein Heritage American Act? When we have the STEM mandates in state law? Do we have that, Stanley, yet?
I mean, I think at this rate, you know, we have a pastor that's pursuing this. All we need is a scientist in the legislature who is going to pursue this. So let's get a chemist or a biologist, and then we might just be there.
A scientist, a biologist, and a priest walk into a statehouse. It sounds like a joke almost.
Well, if it's just a priest, somebody's going to say, why isn't this, and this there too? So, because again, Ohio is, and America is a more diverse country than it was at Plymouth Rock time.
Yeah, it just goes to how vaguely worded the U.S. Constitution is. It gets us in trouble on how you interpret it, you know. You can't endorse religion, but you can't prohibit people from talking about it, so it goes back and forth each way. So
and the whole reason for America was the Europeans wanted state-sponsored and controlled religion, and people in America wanted to escape that. So religious history is part of our history.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. Stanley Gates, you're up first.
Yeah, well, what happened today, Louisiana just voted to eliminate the one majority district in Louisiana, and I think that should be an alarm. I mean, that is an assault on democracy at this point. Folks should be concerned. States all across the country are doing this now, in the South in particular, and I think it's a retreat from our values, and I do think that that's something that we should not be silent about. Folks should be organizing. Folks should be making sure that they're taking action as well.
All right. Terry.
This thing called AI is in the news. We've even had the Pope recently do his encyclical saying, here's some of the things you should and shouldn't do. But I think this past week, the state Senate did pass a bill. But there's this big debate going on. How much should the feds, which is more national, control AI or set up guardrails versus what individual states do? So AI is an issue that's going to get bigger and bigger. It's not just the Pope who's on the bandwagon.
Sarah.
Yeah, we'll go a little personal here. I'm back from marrying the love of my life. Got to travel to Rome with him to meet the Pope. And we got a blessing from the Pope. So very special time in my life. And now I get to be with you all again. So.
Spread
that love, right?
From the Pope to public TV. Well, congratulations, Sarah. I just got back from Ireland, and lawmakers continue to fix the property tax system here in Ohio. And I learned when I was over there that they had a tax in the early 1800s that taxed windows. If you had more than 3 windows, you paid more in property taxes. That's why you see so many cottages with only 3 windows and half doors, because that open space above the closed door was not taxed. Anyway, Ireland's tax on daylight was not popular, but it took 50 years to repeal it, proving that fights over property taxes are not new, not unique to Ohio, and not easily solved. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. A reminder to check out the WOSU News page on YouTube. There you can see and share every episode of this program. Go to YouTube, search for WOSU News, and you can find us there. You can also watch us on demand at our website, wosu.org, and the PBS app. For our crew and panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.